Good morning, everyone, and welcome. We've reached the top of the hour, so we're going to go ahead and start our webinar today. My name is Chris Vogel. I work for MyPro, and we're hosting the event today for Innovate Connect. At Innovate Connect, we bring people together, we bring thinkers together and thinking leaders together to share ideas across industries and across disciplines. We've had multiple webinars that we've shared, design thinking, COVID impacts, education and innovation around education. Today we're going to talk about design thinking in depth, and we have two very experienced and fantastic panelists to share their thoughts and information with us here today. Introducing them quickly, we've got Mike Kruska from Allen Interactions. Mike has been an innovative thinker and leader. He's been providing technology and business model solutions to Fortune 500 and government startups. He is the customer success officer at Allen Interactions, and he has a vast experience with design thinking in technical solutions and beyond that. We also have Travis Petrowski. And Travis has over 25 years of transformational leadership in the back office and technologies within organization. He's been an operational leader for a Fortune 200 financial services organization. And he brings design thinking tools and multifaceted thinking to organizations as well for us at MyPro. So we've got both gentlemen are going to share with us a walkthrough of presentation. They're going to engage us in thinking about design thinking today and how we can practically apply it to the work that we do. So, and at the end of the discussion here today, we're going to open it up for chat with Travis and Mike. So at any time throughout the process today, feel free to submit questions through the questions app here on Zoom and or through the chat function. And I will pop back in later in the discussion towards the end of the hour and share those with you, get answers. And our goal here today is to provide some practical ways to use design thinking in your work and to bring those things home. So without further ado, I'm going to pass it off to Mike and Travis, and I'll let you guys run with it. Oh, incidentally, Mike and Travis are both musical instrument players. And as we talked about this before we got started today, they said, let's jam together and get design thinking out for everyone. So go ahead, folks. Let's start the jam.
Let's start it. All right. Hey, good morning, everybody. Well, it's a tight time frame, so we'll get right into it. Thanks for those introductions, Chris. So let's just start a little background. The mindset of lean, which a lot of people are, familiar with, continuous improvement, is, we're constantly improving our current offering, whatever that is. We're trying to make it better, more efficient. But there's an inherent bias risk of preserving and overly optimizing something that has a degrading value proposition in the marketplace. We could think of like a VHS, DVD, Blockbuster selling their product. We could think of gas-powered cars. Value propositions naturally decay over time. And why is that? Well, because customer needs and expectations are always changing. You go even to the grocery store now, they're innovating with COVID, and you see what the grocery store is doing. And you're like, well, why can't that happen in this other business I'm working in? Or you see a technology and you get something new from your iPhone. You're like, wow, that's really cool. Why can't my car do that? So if we don't keep looking at where the customer's needs and expectations are, and we just get myopic and keep focusing on our current offering, we usually create this gap, right? And it's a blind spot. And this is why disruption happens, is because these ideas you would think the industry leaders would identify, they just miss it. So we look at Blockbuster, and we'll look at Ford, General Motors real quick. Netflix, right? They disrupted Blockbuster. They started out, if you remember back in the day, we used to get them in the mail, DVDs. And then they got out of that business, and they saw the trend was streaming, and they went into the streaming business. And then they saw that, hey, that's going to be a tough business. We need to build our own original content. So they've been evolving and changing their model. They haven't just been continuously improving their offering. And same with Tesla. they came along and they said, hey, the car, we don't need to be gassed anymore. Oh, it should self-drive. Oh, it shouldn't even need to be sold on a dealer lot. Oh, and it's digital. It's just going to upgrade and get better over and over again. So they totally created a different business model. But yet GM and Ford were right there and they didn't even see what was before them. So this is why innovation is important. And we're going to talk today about how do we kind of make sure we don't create this big gap. Oh, Mike, your mic's not on.
Yeah, thank you for taking time this morning. Just a reminder, if you haven't turned on the chat, please turn on the chat. I'll be putting some content, some links in there, some questions, trying to keep us all cognitively engaged this morning. But when we're thinking about building something new or building something innovative, this whole process of dreaming and making is absolutely critical. When we think about something like, the space shuttle as an example, well, what's the purpose of the space shuttle? Well, it's supposed to get people in cargo safely and comfortably out in beyond the atmosphere of Earth and support life and some operations, but it's also meant to get people back to Earth in some way. So when we start to think about designing things, there's a range of complexities that we might face. And the concept of fidelity is something that's really important. And design thinking, as we're going to unpack for you today, gives us the ability to create a shared space where we can start to visualize the problem, the opportunities, potential solutions, and rack them out in some ways. But, the upper left picture here, boy, that's a pretty simple conceptual model. We could make that in about a minute, but to make the actual thing of the space shuttle takes a lot of other engineering at different levels of fidelity. But the idea is that we want to be able to quickly capture what a notional idea might be like for potential innovation, for potential transformation, for a new business model, for a new strategy along the way. So thinking about fidelity is really important. And also thinking about visualizing what it is that we're thinking about.
So I wanted to just share, when we go in organizations, it's, the battle of the teams, right? You got your IT team that's all about agile, your continuous improvement team, they're all saying Lean Six Sigma, and then your customer insights team is probably saying design thinking. And I want to just give you context that if you're having those arguments in your organization, which you probably are, the tagline is better together. So all of these frameworks really do need to work together. And to put your context, say we're talking about design thinking, which is that red, where we're really seeking for opportunities, we're looking for unmet needs, and we're really trying to create that first kind of drawing specs that we showed of like a prototype of what the customer may want to go after. And then we'll pass it to those agile teams, which then can develop it, build it, either a service or a product. And then, Lean Six Sigma, how do we operationalize this? How do we make it efficient and ever better? So it is kind of a spectrum here. So all three have a play in your organization.
So to illuminate design thinking a little bit more, it's really a way to explore and define a problem space. Travis is going to talk a little bit more about this, but we're thinking divergently and we're thinking convergently and balancing that out. At the core, it's human-centered. And so we're really thinking about empathy, about needs, pains, and gains along the way. It's also participatory in that you want to get a multi-stakeholder group together. You want a diversity of thoughts and opinions. And from getting that group together, all of us are smarter than some of us. We're able to really creatively explore and define the problem space and the opportunity space as well. As far as iterative thinking, as I mentioned, so that space shuttle line drawing, well, we might have designed 20 or 30 of those different concepts. So it's think, it's do, it's test, it's think, it's do, it's test. Prototyping on paper is really what I call that. But the key thing is we want to be highly visual. So we're going to show you an innovation canvas today and do an exercise to make it really practical. But the key thing is that we're visualizing in a shared space together, that we're able to know that we are all seeing the same thing. And the other piece is that once we start to understand that shared space, we're able to think about what prototypes we might build quickly, whether they're on paper or digital or real world type of product, and get them in front of customers and get feedback along the way. One other way to think about this is creating a world. So we're trying to understand the future, and that future space isn't right in front of us. You might think about it as going around the corner, and that's around the corner where we want to be able to see and understand. And so design thinking allows us to imagine a world, to create that world, open the world up and explore it so that we can see what those potential and possibilities are around the corner, and come back to that inflection point and see how we might be able to take our organization there, how we might be able to take a customer experience or a customer journey there.
So kind of the flow of design thinking. So the first thing is learning objectives. Like, we're not just going out, I hate it when people say, go innovate. It's like, all right, well, what does that mean? So you got to have an objective. So if you're an insurance company and you want to improve the claims experience, so what insights are we going to learn about, what are the unmet needs or opportunities in that space? You're still framing the problem. And then the discovery, searching for the problem, right? I like to use this as divergence. So let's be open, right? Beginner's mind. What's really going out with our customers or with the people we're focusing on? It could be internal, right? We can apply design thinking to internal practices and our employees. Maybe we're going to focus the learning on the onboarding of a new employee experience. So let's really understand what's going on in that process. And then eventually that we got to lock down on, all right, where are we going to focus our time and attention? So that's where we need to go and divergent. And this is good language with teams. When you're leading through innovation, it's, hey, let's be divergent. Now it's time to be convergent. Because at the end of the day, we need to then focus on the best opportunities. So as we're doing that research and understanding the employees or the customers, we'll walk away with lots of ideas, but at some point we're going to say, let's focus on these. And then we go back to divergent thinking again. So now, all right, how might we? What are the possibilities? Another set of brainstorming and trying and learning, testing and learning. So we're going to maybe prototype something. What did the customer think about that? Did that work? Let's try that out. But then again, we still need to deliver. So at some point we have to say, all right, enough prototyping. It's time to convert. Which of these ideas or ideas we're going to put together to a final solution, which we're going to then deploy. So, people think design thinking is all kind of that imaginative, creative process. Yes, it is. And there is some analytical thinking that has to come in to make sure we're delivering real results. So the flow, I like to use this 4-box model to kind of explain how design thinking works. So the first part, the left side is all about understanding the problem. So research, discover. There we're going to go talk to people, real customers, real employees, observe them, watch them, interview them, and get real information about what the consumer or employees are doing, thinking, feeling. And then we need to synthesize that. We need to then make that into themes and understanding. And then addressing the problem. Once we have good clarity on the problem, right, we're going to then ideate, how might we? And come up with a bunch of concepts, which then will eventually put to some kind of prototype, which will then, what I like to say, resonance testing, take that back to the people we talked to and like, what do you think about this? Let's get some feedback on it. So we're moving between that understand and solving side. And at the same time, we've got this real and abstract kind of concept going. So when the real, right, we're sitting down talking to real customers or employees, we're observing real people. And then on the prototyping side, we're making something people can see, touch, feel, and respond to and interact with. And on the abstract side, synthesis is organizing, creating alignment diagrams, and creating themes and design principles on the synthesis side of what we learned to then drive ideation. So then we can come up with ideas. And there's high traceability in this process. It's not making things up. Like if I have an idea, I should be able to trace that back to the synthesis, to the research, right? So if there's good evidence that we're using to come up with our ideas and innovation, it's not just like something I came up with thin air. We're going to show you that process. So it seems like on the surface that this is like an iterative kind of process, but it's not. It's more like this, and this is where it gets a little messy. You're going to be doing some research synthesis. You maybe have an idea, then maybe you're going to go jump back to some research. So even though it looked really clean, you need to guide it as the evidence you're finding through the process. And sometimes you might just start with an idea. Somebody might have an idea. Well, let's prototype it. Let's go take it to the consumers or the employees. Let's test it. Let's see what they thought about it. So you can start at any one of these boxes. You don't always have to start at research. So this is a good mental model to kind of think about what innovation looks and feels like.
So, as Christopher mentioned, we were talking about jamming when I first met Travis, and we're going to jam together on this. So you can have sort of two mindsets here as you're thinking about the future. One is this continuous improvement mindset. So you might call that the business scientist mindset, where we're really asking questions and really using critical thinking to dig in. The other one is more of the business musician mindset. We're going to really try to be creative stuff. We don't know if it's going to work, but we're going to test out a lot of ideas that really starts with focus on the person and builds out from there. Whereas the continuous improvement process really focuses on the process itself. So design thinking is a really good support mechanism for creating this space for the creative exploration along the way. One thing that Travis mentioned that I want to reinforce, he said, how might we, or what we call HMW, or design questions. These are always wonderful questions to have, like how might we make the customer experience super sticky? How might we whatever? So these are good things to think about that people are using consistently to develop new and innovative ideas. On the innovation process side, thinking about open-ended problems like how might we transform the customer experience so that they never leave. In the continuous improvement, we have some clear problems that we might be addressing, like how do we reduce our call time? That's a clear problem in a call center and really good. But the open-ended, the musician might say, how do we have every phone call end with "have a groovy day"? So thinking about discovering unique and novel solutions. What's that thing that's around the corner that we just can't see because we're focused too much on the problems that lie in front of us. We think about root cause analysis from the business scientist mindset, and that often distracts us from thinking about things that are unique and novel. So I think you're probably starting to see there's some differences between this in terms of the business musician thinking qualitative first. What can we do that's going to have some type of impact in a qualitative manner, whereas the business scientist is thinking about the quantitative first. What can we definitely measure? What are we definitely going to know has impact? Complexity, as I mentioned early on, is something that is critical, and it's something that it's critical that I think we embrace and just explore creatively in the high complexity space as the business musician. Travis, I'm going to ask you to jump on this one here. You want to take this to the end? Thank you.
That is to the end, yeah.
Oh, one slide back.
There we go.
There you go. Oh, cool. No, yeah. You want to finish this one out from isolating variable?
Oh, sure. Yeah. So zero-based design, I like to use that term. A lot of people are familiar with zero-based budgeting, but starting with nothing, like the clean slate, where continuous improvement, we're often taking a current process and then we're trying to, how do we improve it? How do we get rid of the waste? How do we make it more efficient, more effective? And then, innovation is really that growth. We talked about, like, how do I get a new offering, something outside the box that's trying to grow, where the continuous improvement side, usually we're always trying to go after that waste, variation, and burden. So their focuses are just a little different. So this just gives you a little mindset difference that, and again, they're both good. Neither one of these is bad. We want to have both the business scientist and the business musician mindset in our organizations. And we want to encourage people to play both hats, right? Some people are more naturally gifted in one or the other, but we want people to have both in our organizations. So some design real quick, these are, we're gonna spend a lot of time on these because they're often, you've probably heard of these before, but when we remember the left side of that quad box, right, was understanding the problem. So after we've talked to customers and employees and kind of want to synthesize, these are some alignment artifacts that we would create to get everybody understanding what we discovered so that we can start ideating, getting to the fun part, which is creating something new. So, the persona is a good tool. It summarizes a group of users we found into something we can talk about in the design team. And we'll use their name, obviously. We'll give a name to this and we'll say, hey, Jack, remember like when we talked to the Jack, Jacks are struggling with this problem and we need to find a way to go after that. So we're really trying to put some kind of meaning behind the people. And sometimes we might even have videos that might show clips of, people that represent Jack in the persona. So that's a great tool that we'll use. And it also helps bring other people in the design team. So the people that were on the left side understanding the problem, you may want to introduce other people on the ideation side, and to bring them up to speed quick, it's good to have some of these artifacts to help them understand what you learned. And then the other one that's pretty common is a journey map. The thing about a journey map, maybe you've done value stream mapping in the continuous improvement world. What's different about a journey map is this pre-engagement and post-engagement. So it looks at what's happening before the employee or the customer hits your business process. So you understand like what's in their mindset, what are they bringing into their process? Maybe some people might want to call it baggage. Maybe it's like what are they excited about when they're coming into their process? And then post-engagement, what happens after? So like an example of a mortgage company, there's a lot of work that happens. They're out searching for a home and talking with a bunch of family friends. That's before they even get to the mortgage company, which is make up an application. So we would explore this, and then maybe there's ideas or processes or practices we could innovate on this side to help, create growth in our company. And then what we usually do in these swim lanes, so, through the process, we would say, what's happening? So what is the consumer doing at each of these phases? And it's not just what they're doing with our company, it's what other things are they doing. So we see the fuller picture. And we usually show some kind of emotional state. Are they happy, sad, aggravated, confused? And then we add a couple extra custom swim lanes about, what are the opportunities we see? Where are the pain points? Where are the moments of truth going on in this process? So it's a good tool to align everybody of the current state. And it really exposes opportunities to fill in the gaps in the journey of the end-to-end journey, right? We're not just trying to focus on one part. We're looking at the end-to-end experience. So these are good tools to think about.
So yeah, just a quick note here. So in thinking about something like personas, I was working on the data side of a project to understand what the white space was around a certain cranberry juice manufacturer and their customer base. What we discovered through extensive data analysis is that there are sometimes unmet needs that people have that people develop a compensating behavior for from a consumer standpoint. And in the white space of 30 million plus bits of data, we discovered that there were a group of women that were drinking cranberry juice out of a wine glass several times a week. They were doing this because they didn't have time or they didn't want to be in the head state of having a glass of wine, but they wanted to give themselves a little treat and they wanted to relax in some way. And so that exploration process brought up some ideas about, well, could we serve cranberry juice in a more wine bottle like apparatus for people? Would that help to make people feel more like this? So looking out and then looking in is something that's really important. Two things that we're going to drill into here are balancing business, users, and technology. So what is feasible in terms of technology has to be both desirable for users and also viable for the business itself. And then there's a model called the 10 types of innovation. So if we want to be innovative, that's nice to say, and we've showed some ways that you can start to explore the space, but where are the ways that you can actually be innovative? So I'll call everyone's attention to the chat for 1 second. I'm looking for some examples of innovative companies. We've had Apple so far and a few others. If you guys wouldn't mind, think about a company that you consider to be really innovative and throw in the chat. We're going to use these for a little exercise that we're going to do together here in a little bit. So as I mentioned, we sort of have these three areas. What does the user really desire? My example I often start with is, hey, if I made a chocolate covered unicorn and I gave it to you, would you accept it from me? And most people say, yeah, because they like chocolate and they think unicorns are quite interesting. But if I said, I would like you to give me $100 for that chocolate covered unicorn, most people don't say yes to that because it's not all that interesting and it wasn't something that they actually wanted. A lot of times we gravitate to the technology side of this. What what is feasible, because we often make assumptions about what we know about the end user, and what we know about the business. So we get stuck in technology. When I'm looking at a team that's developing a product or strategy transformation, or any type of innovation activity, always looking for balance and seeking to be at the center of this sort of Venn diagram. Travis, you want to comment about that glorious boat car on the right side there?
Yeah, so I think that is a good example of that. Has anyone seen this on the road anywhere? I mean, it's a combination of a car and a boat, but I mean, does it really satisfy what the users want? It's probably a mediocre boat. It's probably a mediocre car. So this is a great example of if the consumer doesn't want it, all right, it's not innovation. So coming up with great ideas that are desirable, we just say that's just playing around. So we're trying to look, we've got those deep insights we're getting from research. We're validating with them that's something they're going to want and actually will engage with.
So to put some mathematics behind it, Bill Owlett from MIT has a lovely book called Disciplined Entrepreneurship, which is not the book that is listed here. And in that book, he defines innovation as the product of invention and commercialization. If invention is zero and we commercialize that, that's not a lot of innovation. That example is bottled water. Water's been around a long time. Puddles fill up, maybe a rock falls on top, and we've got a container with water in it. But that doesn't mean that you can't be successful. It's tens of billions of dollars for just the regular water category plus flavored water. So if we invent something and we come up with great creative ideas and we don't take it to market, that's also not innovative. So the idea is that we'll assume that you know how to take something from inside of your walls out into the marketplace in terms of commercialization. So the question becomes, well, how do we invent, and what areas can we look to invent or discover? Larry Keeley has a book called 10 Types of Innovation, and Travis and I, when we first started talking about this, immediately connected because we use the same models from him, and they're fantastic models to get you to think about critical focus areas and that you can invent within. What Larry Keeley discovered is that people that innovate in 5 or more of these areas actually have a different position in their market, different stock price, different valuation as compared to people that innovate in 5 or less areas. And there are a handful of companies that actually innovate in all 10 areas, which is extremely challenging. And you can imagine it might be a little bit of a lack of focus to do so. But if you're a big enough company, you can bring the right people together and be able to innovate in all of the areas.
Right, so I want to talk a little bit more about the overview of this. So the ambition here was to define a systematic approach for innovation. A core principle was that there's very little, anything new under the sun, and we often fail to appreciate that a lot of innovations are just based on previous advances. So innovations don't have to be new to the world, only to the market or industry. So think of this as kind of a periodic table metaphor where we're looking to take all these pieces and put them together and frame it for our business. And by combining these various elements. So there's 3 categories. In the middle is probably what everyone thinks about when they think of innovation. It's the offering, right? So what's my product? What's my service or the system around it? To the left is what I call it more operational. It's under here, they call it configuration. And then to the right, it's about the experience side. So how I engage in the product or offering. So the right side's the front stage, the left side's the backstage. And what I always ask people is like, if you had a portfolio, if you looked at your business today, like what would be your percentage of innovation going on today in configuration, offering, and experience? I would bet a lot of it's probably in the offering side and in configuration. You're probably under thinking about the configuration side of it. So that's just something to be thinking about. So these, real quick, I want to go through these and give you quick examples of what these are. So like profit model, think about Best Buy pivoting to selling shelf space to manufacturers versus sales. So what they do is they charge Sony, like, if you want my product on Best Buy now, because everyone's going online, I'm going to charge you for that shelf space. That's a different innovation on profit model. The network, think of Amazon partnering with Kohl's department store to handle returns, right? They have a partner now. They changed it. It's really easy. If you got a return, it's so nice just to show up at Kohl's to do that. Structure. So like think of Southwest Airlines, they're flying their airplanes, right? With the Boeing 737. So what they really did is they became very efficient on that one type of airplane. Process, right? Just think of Toyota. They became very, very good at the Toyota production system. And that's something that it's out there, everyone can copy, but everyone seems to have a hard time doing what Toyota does with lean manufacturing. Product performance, you could think of like Tesla, right? I got the longest running car and a battery. Nobody can compete with me. I mean, they're trying to really drive that product performance or product system, right? That's like bringing a bunch of players together. So, who can we partner with on our platform? On the service side, right? I think people think of Zappos. What are they doing with, they're like, they'll go above and beyond and do everything for their customers. They're known like, we want great service. Channel, you could think of even Netflix, they did a great job of like, hey, my TV shows go from my phone to my laptop to my TV. It's all seamless. They're integrating multiple channels. Brand and messaging, right? You think of Harley, back in the day, Harley had this great brand messaging, or Intel Inside is another good example. You look at your IBM PC and it's got that Intel sticker on it. And then lastly, in customer engagement, how do we create that ongoing engagement with the customer? And, example, I use a lot of financial services are trying to do asset allocation and aggregation, where give us all your passwords and you log onto this website, and then I'll show you what you're spending your money on, and I'll show you how your net worth is. So it makes me want to keep coming back to your platform. So I'm not just buying financial assets, you're providing me some engagement, something extra. So those are just some examples of how you can piece this framework together. And it's pretty powerful. And as Mike mentioned, the power really becomes in, think of the stereo. If you looked at your business today, how many of these are you really pulling on to innovate on? And if you can pull the lever in multiple of these, and play for the musician, right? Chords, not notes. That's where the power comes in this framework. And this framework comes with just lots of ideas to think about. So it's not like you have to start with something. It has very specific thought starters, and then you can use that to ideate within your organization. So lastly in here, I talked about this, build all this out, that the real often underdeveloped opportunity is really on that experience and operational side. And we have some values here like risk, investment, value, and imitated, right? So if you look at risk, right, how risky is it to innovate on the operational side versus coming up with a brand new offering? It's pretty different. And it's a lower risk to be innovating at this side. So, a lot of people, if you're not leveraging the operations side and you're a low risk organization, that might be a good place to start, or the experience side. Investment, how much money do I need to invest in innovation, right? Products and offerings are pretty expensive. Value, so what's the return? And then lastly, how easily is it imitated? And I think we've learned, right, that products and services get copied pretty easily. I had a friend who had a really good idea on Amazon. It was basically this wrapper that put around suitcases, and he had like 5 different designs. And I think it was within 3 months, he already had, there's 5 other people selling the exact same design on Amazon for a lower price. So, but if operational wise, I mean, just think about Toyota, what they created, that Toyota production system, it's really hard to copy what Toyota is doing, or Amazon for their ecosystem. It makes it really difficult for competitors. Or experience is another good place. So just think about these and the spectrum as you look at your portfolio of innovation.
So one way to think about this, so there, there's the 10 elements that are here, but there's the major areas of configuration, offering, and experience. So I tend to think of configuration as I'm inside of a chain link fence, and I am organized. I've got my team. We're structured in a certain way. There's some pipelines that go out to the network to other chain link fences of organizations that I work with, but we've got our way of working inside and our way of pushing value in and out of that. The offering essentially is, if someone's looking from the outside, they can't see everything inside that chain link fence, but they can kind of get a feel for what it is that we're doing. And the experience, if I come up and I put my money in the slot, what am I getting? How am I getting it? And how do I visualize, what that experience looks like from an engagement perspective and from a brand perspective. So I want to do a little bit of a practical exercise. Travis and Christopher and I have decided that we're going to knight all of you as innovation analysts. So we're going to pick a company, and I'd like to leverage the chat. If you don't have it already open, if you wouldn't mind opening the chat. And I've seen a couple things in here so far around Apple and Amazon and Google. Travis, I'm going to let you make a executive decision here. So we saw Tesla, Apple, Amazon, Google. Which one of those do you think would be a good for our innovation analyst team of 21 people to tackle right now?
Well, I'm a Tesla fan, so let's do Tesla.
You want to do Tesla? All right. Will you do me a favor? Will you go back up to three slides, I think, earlier to this one? Yeah, absolutely. So let's start out with the offering. So what is Tesla really offering that's innovative in terms of what the product's performance is or what the product system is? I'm going to give us 90 seconds. We'll do time-bound sprints on this and see how many items that all of us as innovation evangelists that have been knighted, let's see how many things we can possibly come up with from the outside looking in at Tesla as a product and the product system. It would be really great if someone actually had a Tesla on here. And if they do, please declare themselves. Christina, can you say more about service? Got about 30 seconds left. Oh, yeah. Make sure your chat is set to all panelists and attendees. Thank you, Christine. Do you have a Tesla, Travis?
No.
Oh.
wow.
All right. All right. All right. I've got two friends with them. They're fascinating vehicles, and now that I don't need a vehicle, I'm really thinking about just keeping with my Subaru. All right, excellent. We're going to move on to brand and message. So when you think about Tesla as a brand and things that you see in the market, how are they differentiating? How are they potentially being innovative with the way that they're communicating and connecting around their brand and message? And what we'll find for some of these is that we probably have a lot of things for some and maybe not so many for others. And maybe some of these they're not innovating in. And so outside looking in, if we were all working at a new electric vehicle company, this would be a great way to benchmark our competitors. Oh, Paul, that's a great comment. Their brand is becoming the category. Cool. We're ticking down under 20 seconds, and we're going to move on to customer engagement. So what are the innovative things that they do to engage customers in their entire journey from thinking about an awareness and to buying and service along the way? That's why I'm hoping that someone has a Tesla that's on this. And give us about 15 more seconds. If we don't have something, we'll move out to channel next. Well, Paul, that's a great point, especially when thinking about the Tesla truck. Excellent. So let's flip over to channel. What are the ways that we see Tesla in the world? And I don't know about you, but when I'm out, when I see one, I can't help but stare at it for some reason. And so just the driver advertisement feature itself is very interesting to me. So I would say the car is a rolling billboard. They find ways to put their dealerships in the most high profile places, and they look so darn futuristic too. All right. Moving on to service. What are the things that surround the experience for customers? I'm on the East Coast, and we have the Sheets convenience store, and boy, they have charging stations about everywhere at all the Sheets, right? To Shell, that's a really good point about his high profile. Having a CEO that's a chief media mogul too, it doesn't hurt. All right. Anything else on service? And we're going to slide back into thinking about the configuration. How do things look like they work inside of Tesla? So let's start with network. I mentioned that, partnerships with C stores for charging stations. How about other ways? Yeah, Neil, that's a great point. Innovate and sell to your competitors. I recently saw a great article about how McDonald's has bought some AI companies and some data companies, and that they're really turning into a software and technology platform for the future. I wonder if they'll use that same technology to power other restaurants like they did with the original invention of fast food. All right, let's jump over to process. This might be a little harder. You might have to do some Google searches here. Shell, that's an interesting we might have to tease that out a little bit further. But what do we know about the process that Tesla uses as compared to other folks? Anyone have any insights around that? Yeah, great point, Paul. It's not just how fast you can build the cars, it's how fast you can build the thing that builds the cars. And having that sort of iterative capability with software is an interesting angle too. I can continually upgrade my entire fleet without you ever coming to the garage. All right, about 15 more seconds on this one. All right, moving on to structure. What do we know or might we infer around the way that Tesla is structured? You'll throw in here that innovation is the first thought. It's all about, everything is all about innovation. We're going to innovate on everything that we're going to do all the time. And we need to have the structural alignment of our team to be able to do that. I'd say probably hiring best talent. Do you agree with that one, Travis?
Yeah, I think they're always, they have a pretty high bar of who they're going to let in the door.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, and then the last area here, profit model. What are the innovations in the profit model? Yep, good call on that, Paul. Excellent. So you've all been knighted as innovation analysts, and the best way to learn this framework is to take your team, get them to look at another company and think about that. So
right.
what?
Just,
Yep.
yeah, we wanted some. I went too far there, so let's build that out. So, how do you apply this framework? Just even doing your own company, right? I mean, one thing is just sit down with your team and walk through and model out, what is your innovation, right? We had that diagram of the, how much are we pulling in each of these. So just having agreement on that, and then seeing where are you not innovating, or where might there be opportunity to innovate is a good way to do that. So you can introduce, just like we did, this 10 types. You can get the book, read through the book, do that with your team. Then you can then look at your competitors. All right, so it'll be interesting. Most industries, everybody seems to be innovating in the same places. So you'll find that they all kind of look the same. If you looked at Ford, if you looked at Chrysler, right? If you looked at all those, they're all going to be pretty much different. And that's where the disruption happens. Somebody kind of comes in and changes the game. So that's a great place to, do an exercise with, look at some of your competitors and then find out where there's opportunity. Where's that white space that you can go after and innovate? And then, just like we said, you got to have a plan. So, what of these things could you do now, next, and later? You can't do everything at once, but, maybe there's some things you want to experiment with, try and learn, right? Different pricing models. So what could we do on that side, and maybe research that? So it's a real approachable framework. And again, this is, on the right side ideation. You still want to do this and innovate based on your true customer needs. So you need to understand your customers, right, their personas and their insights about them to drive, the innovation on the right side, which is a tool to use, which is the 10 types. So for now that you're thirsty for innovation, Mike, you want to talk about what can we do to activate this?
Yeah, there's a lot of great stuff out there. Certainly recommend if you really want to dig deep and get some really good practical examples and some really good reverse models on companies' innovation. Larry Keeley's 10 Types of Innovation is really great. If you really want to just get into design thinking itself and explore, the book Game Storming is wonderful. It's the grim fairy tales of design thinking tools. Dave Gray and Suni Brown and James McAnufo went out like Grimm's did and pulled together all the different types of techniques that people use in design thinking for defining problem spaces and exploring solutions. And if you really want to bring this into practice in your organization, it's a great place to start. There's a ton of tools and how-tos in there as far as not just the tools, but also being a good facilitator and collaborator for creating spaces. Digging deeper, Lean Startup, if you haven't read it, it's really, really good. Business Model Generation and Value Proposition Design from Alexander Osterwalder are really fantastic design thinking tools that allow you to design a great business model very, very quickly and ensure that your value proposition to your end customers aligns with that. Lika and Ogilvy's Designing for Growth is also another great place to get into applying design thinking to your business. And although most of us don't have 5 days that we can take a team and deploy them to work on a problem, Google's Sprint book is also really fantastic. The other one that isn't on here that I would highly recommend is a book called Talking to Humans. It's about 90 pages long and follows the journey of two scientists / inventors and their conversation with an investor who challenges them to not just think about the solution, but to really think about the problem and validate the problem space and how to qualitatively and quantitatively categorize and validate their assumptions along the way. So these are great places to start. If you want to dig in the innovation, the 10 types is great. If you want to just be more broad in terms of design thinking, Game Storming is an excellent place to start.
Great. So I think now we're to Q&A. Got about 8 minutes left, so.
We do, and I've been watching through the process, so I'm going to throw a couple of questions out there before, while people get a chance to add a couple more. One question that came in there is, okay, so there's 10 types of innovation. Did I hear you say that you should have at least 5 to be an innovative musician, jam person? Or
so that's what Keeley's work in taking that innovation framework and evaluating companies and looking at where companies were innovating showed that companies that had 5 or more areas of innovation had a different position. So I don't know what's magical about that threshold, but it seems to be a magical threshold.
Yeah. Great. Another question that came in is many companies are innovating. How do you scale?
Yeah, I think that's a good one. And I think I view innovation like those that are familiar with continuous improvement. The idea there is trying to teach people, right, like the 8 times of waste, and we get them engaged in improving their processes. I definitely believe a lot of these tools can be taught to people. And you get people engaged by doing focused improvement work throughout the organization and allowing people to learn the skills like the 10 types and then scale it, and then they can take it back to their teams. So I do think it's very approachable that you don't have to go hire all the time and outsource all your innovation. I do think there's lots of tools, and 10 types is one. There's a lot of other types of tools out there to think about innovation that you could bring into the organization and let people practice and learn. So might give a couple other points on that.
Yeah, scaling is always a challenge, but I think the bigger challenge is coming up with something to scale. That is, I think, probably, I don't know, 3 or 4 times harder. It depends on the size of the organization. depends on the risk profile of the organization. You know, there are a lot of other factors. I'm looking at the clock and saying, well, this is probably a topic all in itself. We should talk about scaling innovation at some point.
That's a great, yeah, I think that might be a whole nother webinar that we have to do on the limited time. So another question I saw came out there is, okay, so you give me some tools to work with here today. You gave me some practical things to think about, maybe create personas, maybe do journey mapping, dig deeper into the 10 types, trying to identify where our skills are in that, learn a little bit more about it. My leadership team doesn't right now see where the value comes out of this. Is there a way that I can think about approaching them? And how should I think about making this valued inside of the organization? Any thoughts, tips, considerations?
Yeah, I would say this. First, it's a little bit of education about why innovation is important. But I also think it's looking at example companies that just didn't innovate, that just aren't here anymore. I mean, if you look at the churn, 15 years ago, over 85% of the S&P 500 companies made a thing in some way. Today, less than 15% of them actually make a thing. They're creating value with knowledge, information, or data, or pulling some value stream through. So if you just look at the trends of companies and you look at someone like Kodak or other organizations and say, are we going to be the Kodak? Or are we going to be the Tesla? So I think that change happens and buy-in happens one coffee at a time. In the world we're living in, that's a little bit harder. But you can still hop on Zoom with someone and say, hey, what are the forces that are in our market? Are we creating them, or are those pressures being exerted on us? And so it's a matter of having the right conversations. There's some really good articles obviously out there, but Harvard Business Review has some really good articles that you can find around innovation and innovation stance as well. And I think it's just educating about the opportunity and also ensuring that people feel like it's not impossible to get there. When we say, oh, let's innovate, well, how? But I think if you come to the table and say, here's the case for why we should innovate, because we don't want to be a dinosaur. And here's a framework that industry is using in a wide variety of areas with really good results. I think that makes it more tractable and possible. But Travis, I'd throw that over to you too.
No, I think those are good points. And I just think that, to me, it's not like, should we innovate? I mean, I think you said it's like, we must innovate in some shape or form if we're going to survive. And I think COVID really gave us a lot of interesting insights where that compelling problem forced everybody to think differently. All right, how do I run? A lot of organizations are working remotely that they never thought they would be able to do remotely. And yeah, it's not perfect. And then continuous improvement comes in there, right, to make it ever better. So I really think that when I showed that one slide of, we've got design thinking, agile, continuous improvement, we really need all three of those working together in our organizations. And I think the other thing you said, Mike, is like, this is approachable. I think a lot of people think, like, where do I start? Just like continuous improvement, there is a structured method to innovation and tools to do it. And it can be taught to others and it can be learned. So start with a problem and then show people the value of it. And then usually, right, they catch a fire and it'll create more pull in your organization for more innovation.
So maybe we have time for one more quick question. And I'm sorry if I didn't get to your question here today. We didn't have time for it, but 10 types of innovation seems to be geared for for-profit organizations. Any way to successfully transition this to nonprofit organizations?
Oh, that's a great question. I've used the 10 types of innovation in workshops with Goodwill, in workshops with community organizations like United Way and other foundations, as well as rethinking about an orchestra and its position in the community. With a little bit of primer reading and a little bit of creativity, you can apply that same framework to nonprofits. That's a great question. I had that question and I did experiments to determine if that would actually work. So I really appreciate that question.
And I'd add, you can even use it. I mean, it seems like an outward facing and a lot of it is, but if you're a shared service, an internal organization, you can even use of the little creativity, right? Pull on that too to say, well, how do we innovate and think differently about the service we're providing internally within the organization? So I do think it can be used in multiple frames.
Well, great. Hey, we've reached the top of the hour. And to respect people's time and their commitment to come and join us here today, I want to thank all the participants who joined here today. And hopefully you've got some practical information that you can utilize or at least stimulate some thinking around this. We hope you could join future webinars that we put on by Innovate Connect. A special thanks, of course, to Mike and Travis for taking time out of their schedules today to share with us their thoughts around this. You should know that that we will have a recording of this on the Innovate Connect website, as well as a copy of the presentation. And there's always contact information for any of the panelists that we have out there as well. So thank you again. And again, special thanks to Travis and Mike for taking time to be with us here today. I hope you have a great day. Go out there and be a business musician and jam, if you will, on innovation. So good luck, and we'll talk to you all soon. Thank you. Have a great day. Bye for now.
All right.